Hello, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order at 6:16 p.m., July 18th at City Hall for the Human Relations Commission. And I would like to move us into roll call. Do I say my name or do I just mark myself present? Kat Layton here.
Justin Harper present.
Oh, I was gonna call your name, but I actually kind of like that. You want to just go ahead and tell me your name? You got Justin. All right.
Brittany Dulos, present.
Perfect.
Daniel Jackson, present.
And then Juanita House. Absent. Jennifer Avery. Absent. And Olivia Hudson.
Actually no longer on the commission. Her term expired July 1st.
Okay, and we have a point to talk about that. And also, do we need to add the newly appointed commissioner to this roll call?
Yeah, as soon as she takes her oath of office.
Okay, and she's been contacted for that?
Um,
Okay, great. All right, moving into agenda approval. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at that, and make suggestions if they have any, or if not, make a motion to approve. So yes,
Approve.
you would like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Perfect. Motion made by Justin and a second from Daniel. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I don't think you have to say that if there's only, okay, 4 of us here all saying aye. All right, moving on to the approval of the minutes. So there's 2 different minutes to approve. The first is June 27th, when we had our special Human Relations Commission meeting at the Superior Branch, Ypsi District Library Branch. And the other is the July 10th. So Human Relations and Ypsi Police Advisory Committee. But let's go ahead and make a motion to approve the first item, which is item A, the special human relations.
Make a motion to approve. A.
All right, I had a motion. Is there any second?
I'll second that.
All right, I had a motion by Justin and a second by Brittany. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Moving on quickly to the July 10th meeting minutes with YPAC and HRC, which was also at the same library. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Have a motion to approve.
Thank you. I got a motion from Justin, a second from Daniel. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? All right, motion passes. So we approved both the meeting minutes for June 27th or June 27th and July 10th. Moving on to public comment, we allow 3 minutes per speaker. Please address the commissioners when you are giving your public comment. And we would like to also provide feedback to your comment later on when we have an opportunity to speak and propose business, if you are able to make it. If not, we welcome you to watch it on virtually or the recording so you can hear what we have to say, because we do take your public comment seriously. So is there anyone from the audience or Zoom? All right, come on. Thank you.
Andrew Monroe, Human Resources Commission. People want a safe place to work. They depend on their employer, rightly so, to provide that safety, to remove threats to their safety, and to keep those threats as far as possible from their place of work. Likewise, our tenants want a safe place to live, to go home to every day for themselves, their children, their parents, their neighbors. They depend on their landlord, and rightly so, to do everything possible to ensure that safety, to remove the risk and to remove those risks and to keep them from encroaching on their lives, to protect their homes and their neighborhoods. This is not to say that I, as a landlord, would never rent to someone with a criminal record. I have. But that requires a certain amount of due diligence, wisdom, and discernment. As far as discernment, what goes a long way is honesty and candor. If someone asks you what happened, we believe that honesty and forthrightness is very important, and it increases the likelihood of someone having turned their ways around and discontinued bad patterns of behavior. If you're not willing to exercise discernment, the character typically washes out in other ways, such as violations or building codes of our building codes or other issues. This proposed ordinance ties our hands as landlords, taking away our ability to find the middle ground between offering someone an opportunity to advance and providing them a safe environment to tenants and neighbors. At worst, it requires that we as responsible landlords ignore all obligations of providing that safety. And at best, it requires us to marginalize that risk, split hairs, and will cause us to dance around laws and gamble with other people's safety. If the city is truly placing its residents and their safety first, this proposal should be rejected outright. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other members of the public who would like to make a public comment in person or virtually? If so, virtually, please raise your hand. Okay, can I have a motion to close public comment? A motion by Daniel. Can I have a second?
Second.
And a second from Justin. All in favor to close public comment and move on to presentations?
Aye.
Aye, and all opposed? All right. Thank you again for the public comment. We hope that you're able to hear what we have to say in response later on. And I would also like to clear up some misinformation about that. So I'm really looking forward to that discussion. So thank you again. Mr. Halenga and Mr. Barr, it is now your turn for the overview of board and commission bureaucratic process presentation. So thank you so much for showing up and giving us a run through of what we can and can't do and how to move things from this commission to others.
Absolutely. I don't have necessarily a presentation. This shouldn't take very long. So a board or commission is essentially just an appendage of city council. It's present to do research, review specific ordinances that pertain to that commission, such as Chapter 58 with this commission. Anytime this commission wants to do something, it must vote. And then this is kind of the process to get it on the agenda. It's not been written. It was instituted by a city manager, I believe, in 2018, where an item that is approved by the commission that they want to make a request from city council would be put on that next agenda under boards and commissions communication. At that time, city council will typically, give thumbs up, thumbs down to it. And then if they give thumbs up, it appears on the next agenda for review and approval. So that's kind of how you would go about getting things on an agenda. In terms of the Open Meetings Act, essentially all board bodies are still pretty much under those requirements. They're just done so by city council rather than the state. There are some certain things that are a little bit more lenient. You can attend a meeting and count towards quorum when virtually, and you can discuss things outside of a meeting, but what was discussed has to be brought to the meeting. So we wanted to remove some of the rigid rules of the Open Meetings Act, but it's still the intent that all bodies will operate in the light of day, so that the public can be a part of the discussion. And, so everything that's happening here will be seen by others, or at least have the opportunity to be seen. Just like regular other meetings, the recording must be maintained for at least a year prior to destruction. And that year starts when the minutes of that meeting is approved. There is potential that when council works on its organizational meeting for rules, or potentially before, I would suggest that how a commission interacts with council is codified into a set process. That way it's council determining how how boards and commissions will interact with it, rather than a city manager for some time ago. So that's technically how things get on the agenda for a council meeting currently. That's clearly subject to change. The commission needs to do a yearly report, and that in the past was done so just by a copy being in a packet. However, now commissions must do an oral report to city council. And also now that the council liaisons are here, the chair, the council liaison, staff liaison should be sharing the information with the city clerk's department. So they have the understanding, okay, this is coming up at the next meeting. I need to notice that. So it's, and that doesn't necessarily have to be the chair, but it could be staff liaison or the council liaison could let the clerk department know. The clerk department is over all boards and commissions. So they are the keeper of the records. So any minutes, recordings or things like that are to be maintained by the clerk department. The city attorney, who is here tonight to discuss your ordinances after this, it acts as legal counsel for all boards and commissions. So any question that you might have for legal, you would pass a motion basically asking the question that would go to the city attorney, and then a memo would be provided to the commission. So there's not a lot to discuss in terms of that, but I kind of wanted to be here so I could answer any questions that members of this body might have. This is a very important body, as all of the boards and commissions are, but its function is to support council. Council could ask questions of the body to review, but of course, this body can also make suggestions to council how to, fine tune the ordinance like you have been doing. And yeah, that's really how a board and commission should operate with city council.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
That was extremely helpful and enlightening. I really appreciated that. I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
But does anyone else have any questions before I ask some of my preliminary ones? Just
I have a couple questions, but.
Yeah, no, please go
I-
ahead.
I need to write them down. I think.
Okay,
so just
okay.
Give me a second.
No problem. Anyone want to have any questions?
Don't have any questions?
Maybe these will spark some.
I mean, my only question would be, can we get, or did we get that process in writing so we can reference it? So we're not just referencing it when we do something wrong.
Yeah, so I think the process is not in writing, and I definitely can put something together for you with a clerk department. However, this meeting or committee hasn't been set yet, but I know there's a committee or council wishes to formulate a process for how the budgeted funds for boards and commissions is allocated. And also at that time, they could review how city council operates with this body and other bodies. But if you'd like, yeah, I could definitely put together just a synopsis of what I
And
just said.
maybe if Katie can have that, because I imagine that would be part of the reason that she's here, is to help guide us as to what we're doing. And it
Mhm.
seems like
Absolutely.
I do want to note that Katie won't be the staff liaison after today's meeting. I'm not sure who it's going to be. I can't remember. Tracy?
It'll be Lori Thomas.
Okay.
She is the deputy clerk.
Thank you.
She's also trained as an attorney, so we thought that would be a good fit
That
for
makes
this
sense.
body.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate what you've been able to help us with, Katie. My question and follow up with that, getting it in writing would be helpful for
Mhm.
sure. But also you mentioned changing, like if we want to put together a process and put it in writing,
Sure.
is it better and saving more time if the chair or vice chair, whoever wants, takes the responsibility of getting a first draft going and then bringing it to the commission for review, discussion, and then feedback implementations? Is that usually a more productive and efficient way to do things than like creating it? Like, what is like the most streamlined way of doing that?
Yeah, that would be my recommendation for, you can create subcommittees, and sit down and really work on something and then bring it back to the full body for discussion and then approval to send to city council.
Okay.
I think that's a much more effective use of this body's time.
Okay, great. That's helpful. My next question, you mentioned that the recordings get erased a year after the minutes were approved for that meeting. Is there a way individuals in the public can request those meetings? Recordings?
Prior to, really, we wait much longer than a year, but yes, the public has access to all recordings.
Okay. I know on YouTube, and I was happy that Katie put that on YouTube, because I know initially the guides or the advisory body regulations that staff or council created in lieu of the state OMA.
Mhm.
I know that there wasn't anything about recording specifically on there, but we had asked for that to be added, and I was grateful that y'all did.
Yes.
Because that was really helpful. So thank you. And you mentioned the yearly report. When does that need to be presented to council?
It's in the rules that were approved by council, it's in December.
Okay.
So it's right before, and that's usually typically when a body will approve their annual report is at the end of the calendar year.
Okay.
And then they'll present that to council. It might be staggered and go into the new year just because we have so many bodies. And we just want to allow them enough time in order to present properly.
Okay, and does that report, even though it's oral, is it okay if you were to provide a written report as well? Is
Yes.
that- Okay,
Yes.
and then given that, does that go into the city plan at all? Or is that just like, hey, here's what we worked on?
Well, it's a report. It would go on your web page on the city's website. And then it would be maintained there until the next report is approved. And going back to your question about having a written document, you actually have to have a written document.
You just
So,
present it
yeah, you
orally, I
just present
understand
it
it. Okay, okay.
And that document along with any PowerPoint that you might have for that meeting will be maintained in that council packet. And then all council packets or actually any packet for that matter are required to be maintained permanently.
Okay. And appreciate the information on passing a motion to ask a question to the city attorney. So, and then a memo will be given to us at the next commission meeting, or will it be given before the next commission meeting so we can review it?
It would be as soon as the city attorney would prepare that memo, he would forward it to the city clerk and the city clerk would either get it out to the commission just themselves or hand it off to the staff liaison. So you would get it, once, staff receives it from the city attorney.
Okay, thank you. Those were a majority of my questions at glance. Does anyone have anything that I came up with after that? Please,
And-
Daniel.
My question is more of just a practical, relational, maybe leadership question. As this commission was being formed and has been formed, from your perspective and maybe the perspective of some of the other councilmen and our attorney, why do you think that this commission is so important?
Why do I think this specific body is important?
Yes.
Well, this is the HRC is created by charter. And its basic design is to study potential discrimination occurring in the city and provide a way to have that rectified, as well as creating a process in which to complain, which I believe this body has taken on. But this is the keeper of Chapter 58, which is the non-discrimination ordinance, it is incredibly important to a diverse city like we find ourselves in. And we need to ensure that everyone is treated the same. So I think this body is incredibly important to the citizens of this city.
One follow-up question with that is, what do you see that we can do that other boards and commissions are not able to do to help address those issues more effectively?
So you're able to do studies. You are able to obviously have town hall, which is another form of studying. You're just getting input. So you could create systems to bring in data, and then that data can help to formulate future ordinances to ensure that, we maintain our diversity, that we maintain appreciation and, hold everyone in the city to a standard that understands that we are a city that believes in equality and equity, and we need to maintain that and safeguard that.
I really appreciate you sharing your perspective on those things. I know that most of all of that is also written out in our bylaws,
Correct.
but I appreciate how you articulated from your perspective.
Absolutely.
Those were great questions, by the way. And also interesting to hear the perspective of the city manager give their input to their opinion on those questions. I thank you for asking those. The studies aspect, how does one begin developing a study as a commission board?
So you would examine a topic,
Do we have to create a motion to do that?
yeah, in order to engage the study, it's highly possible that you'll need to request funding, especially if you're going to do it with outside help.
What about applying for grants? Is that applicable? Is that a possibility for the city of Ypsilanti? And are
Well-
we allowed to do that as commissioners?
You are allowed to request the city apply for a grant. The
Okay.
body itself cannot.
Okay. Sorry, continue. That was just
Sure.
go ahead. So request funding, go ahead.
Yeah, so you request funding. There was a former commissioner that wanted to do a study on historic trauma. And so there was a lot of thought that went behind that, but this body or the members of that body did not have the tools available to do that themselves. So something like that, where you would need outside funding, you would again pass a motion and request that. But you can study anything that's in the purview of this body, which is I'll outline under chapter 58. So that's again, that's the advisory role to city council. You bring in information and you give it to city council. So city council then has that information to make informed decisions on how the city can better serve its public.
Awesome. And tying into that, if we have a resolution, for example, that we want to support to bring to council and mayor, you mentioned that the first step is we obviously make a motion and then that motion goes to city staff liaison or city council liaison to get put on the board and commissioners agenda item. And then that's when city council will vote. Is it a supermajority vote or is it a?
No, it's essentially just a consensus.
Okay,
So they say, yeah, let's take this up at our next meeting, and then that would be put on that agenda for
Okay.
discussion and approval or.
Okay, so because I think I did more work than I probably needed to the first two ordinance amendments, what is the best way of writing that? What is it that you'll need for sure from us to make sure that gets through successfully so we don't waste any time with anyone?
So you don't necessarily need to create the ordinances it's yourself.
Okay.
You can at request the city attorney, maybe examine something. If you have an example, you could pass it off to staff and staff could kind of build from there. Similar to what Katie did with the fair housing ordinance. So if there is something that staff can work from, staff would be able to draft that ordinance. If it's something that is you don't really have anything to pull from, I would suggest, again, having some type of subcommittee to work with staff to develop that, to bring it back to the full body for approval.
So, but once we do have that information, what is it that we need to give to, like, whose responsibility is it to write something to give to staff to put on the agenda for council?
So you don't necessarily, you would,
Like, for example, can I use an example?
Sure.
That's okay.
Mhm.
So for example, we had a presentation about drug checking services
Sure.
at the last commission meeting. And one of the persons in the public comment and the presenter asked, like, if we could have a joint resolution with YPAC in support of this to council. So let's say that we want to do that and our commission agrees to wanting to do that. How do we get supporting that resolution from our commission to YPAC and then from there potentially to council? Or at least from us to council?
sure, if you wanted to do that, staff would draft that resolution. This body would approve that resolution and it would go to council.
So the chair wouldn't be responsible for drafting a resolution or is that?
The
also-
chair is definitely welcome to do that, but staff is also there to assist in drafting those resolutions. When I was clerk, I drafted many resolutions for commissions.
Okay, and the resolutions, when you draft them, is that the one that's like whereas,
Mhm.
and therefore, okay. I just wanted to make sure because I think I did the opposite
Sure.
of that last time and I don't want to do that again because
Gotcha.
I just want to be helpful, not
Absolutely.
more of a problem. So thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, I think I asked most of my questions. Does anyone have any more? Because I feel like we got a lot of great information and I like that you requested it in writing. Thank you.
I just thank you for doing this and
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do it. And everyone has my email, correct? So if you have any questions that you want to field my way, by all means, just shoot me an email. I'm always happy to get any information.
You are responsive, so thank you. Thank you, Andrew. City
Thanks.
Manager Halinga. Okay. Moving on, to the next item on the agenda, which is the Human Relations Commission elected officer discussion. So the first part of that is, one, just acknowledging the kind of a little bit of a kerfuffle, is that a little bit of a predicament that we find ourselves in. So at the June 27th meeting, you all nominated and approved me as chair, and then shortly after, we had asked a couple of people if they wanted to be vice chair, and one person who agreed, and that was Juanita, Commissioner House. And fast forward, after requesting, like, what are the responsibilities of a chair? Like, what do I do? What does a vice chair do? It was found that the bylaws that we are operating on currently, which are changeable, but currently the bylaws we're operating on, requests that or demand or require that the people in the commissioner spots are in their seats for a year prior to being in an elected position. So there's like two different kind of outcomes that could happen of this. But I've kind of just wanted to have a discussion first of how people feel about that, what people think. Because yeah, go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, I think we I touched base with some people. I think it was you, Katie, earlier, but like, yeah, just go ahead and let's amend the bylaws. I kind of want to keep it the same, like what you've been doing, like the rotation that we have, the field that we have. Uh, as far as my position, I have too much on my plate to commit. I want to serve where I can serve, so I'm not a disservice for the city. So yes, hey.
Commissioner House.
Yeah, I would like
Commissioner
that.
House in the house. It's 6. That's okay, though. We're glad you're here. Okay. So I have a discussion of amending the bylaws, which is okay, but that would require us having an August meeting. And as of right now, we are not scheduled to have an August meeting. However, if that is something we would like to do, we would just need to make a motion to, have a August 15th meeting at 6 o'clock where we will discuss amending the bylaws, et cetera.
What are, okay, go ahead.
Did I say that wrong?
I was gonna say, I would like to hear some of the pros and cons.
Sure.
Before we, just decide to act.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some other opposing ideas or thoughts about it?
Well, does anyone have any thoughts on that first? Because I think right now what was in the emails was that there's only 3 commissioners right now who have served a year of a term because this commission has been inactive for many years. So even though commissioners were appointed onto the commission, they weren't actively meeting per se. So we started actively meeting again in January.
Correct.
So I'm not really sure of the pros and cons outside of wanting to keep things as they are, to keep things moving forward versus wanting to take a whole nother option to change. Like, I kind of want to stay out of this because I'm in a little bit of a different position and I don't want to be biased. So
So I guess for me, again, I'll just say this, if I were to be in the position, which I think I'd be one of the people that I wouldn't be able to go ahead and do my best duty in that position. That's why I'm saying I want to keep things the same, or amend it as closely as we can. So what we have going can continue to go on.
3 people that would be able to be would be Britt, Justin, or Juanita that would be able to have the position.
I believe I said that.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, that's okay.
I apologize.
My opinion on it is that, like you said, we were inactive. So even though we have been serving for a year, we've all been at the same amount of meetings, I think, since you've joined. So even though I have seniority, there wasn't any actual meetings. So the seniority to me doesn't really feel important here. So I think that amending the bylaw would be a good way to go forward.
Okay, thank you. Juanita, do you have an opinion?
I
Commissioner
don't
House?
have one because I didn't
Vice
know,
Chair House.
I didn't know it was 7. I mean, it's 6 or 7. I was confused. So I'm here and I'm not knowing what y'all even talking about.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I'm glad you were able to make it. I'm sorry for the communication issue. We are talking about, do you have a packet? Okay. We're talking about communications, item A, HRC officer discussion. So where we started was that the discussion was we elected officers at our June 27th meeting at the Ipsy Library at Superior Township. And then shortly after that, we received information via email that our bylaws as they are do not allow me to be in a chair position because I have not served a year as a commissioner. And so that's what we're discussing is that the commission just started in January and Commissioner House, Harper and Doulos, y'all are the only three who would be eligible for officer positions. And so we're discussing, do we want to keep it the same as it is and make an amendment at an August meeting to change our bylaws, which we can do, which would then allow things to stay as they are? Or would we like to keep the bylaws as they are and redo officer elections, which we heard from Justin and Brittany, their opinions of that.
What was their opinion? You don't want to serve?
No, I do not.
That's correct.
You already are,
Yeah, and I'm already serving.
unless you want to step up and be
Yes.
chair, but then we would still have an issue because
I mean, not really, if they're, oh, go ahead.
City Manager Andrew.
Any-
Please, please.
There is a third option. The intent when those bylaws were created was to have someone that understands what the commission is doing. And obviously, since this is kind of a moot point here, since everybody's at the same page, you could just move to suspend the bylaws. And then, you could hold the elections as they are and then continue with that moving forward.
Oh, I thought I suggested that via email and I was told that we had to change the bylaws.
we were told that we had.
I'm
to
okay
have a
with
special-
that. I
we would have to
suggested
set
that
a
at
special meeting
first.
That was noticed
You could suspend the bylaws.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you
at,
for
at the
confirming.
table here tonight.
I believe so.
Like a motion.
Bylaws just with a supermajority, right?
We have me, Juanita, Jennifer, Brittany, Justin, and Daniel. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6.
7 and a youth member.
But the youth can't vote though.
And she's also.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Do you mind stepping? Yeah, thank you.
First of all, if you don't follow the bylaws, your meetings are probably illegal. So you have to follow the bylaws. But what you can do in the case of an emergency like this, as the city manager said, you could suspend the rules for the time being and allow a appointment of the, or nomination and election of the chair with less than a year's service, only for this one time, if you wanted to do that. But you should have a super majority to vote on it. So that's why I asked how many you have. You have, I think you said 6.
We have 6
So
members.
you've got 5 now, so 5 would be a super majority. So that would be one way to do it.
For tonight, and we still need to have the meeting in August. But we would still need to do that.
If you want to amend the bylaws, you have to look at the bylaws. And the bylaws say that you can do it at a meeting, but you have to give a notice of that meeting, and you should have the resolution that you want to have approved in that notice to the meeting. I don't make policy, but looking at it, it seems like the simplest way, if you're happy with your present chair, would be to suspend the rules, have the motion tonight, and then not amend the bylaws, but the next time you came up for election, those bylaws would still be in effect.
Okay, so when would the officer position end where the bylaws would be restarted again? What, is that like a certain amount of the
I'm
term
not-
limit?
What you're asking, the term would be the same term as it ever was.
Okay, so a year
This means
Is
that
that-
temporarily for this situation.
for that year, it's
we acknowledge
suspended.
That it's
Right.
suspended for
Yes.
this situation,
Correct,
and this situation alone.
But
correct,
following this one being concluded.
right.
Okay.
And you don't want to do that a lot, but if you have an unusual situation, Robert's rules would allow that.
I kind of like that idea as a
Okay,
third option.
That is a third option. If we want to take more time to review the bylaws as well, because I'm sure there's other things in there, because one of the things we have power for is also changing our rules and procedures. So there may be things that we want to look at outside of that. And so if we feel comfortable doing a motion to suspend rather than a motion to amend the bylaws at the next one, that's an option as well that we heard. Mr. Vice Chair.
Well, we could also, do as he said, suspend it and then and make sure we look at the bylaws. So going forward, we won't be violating any rules.
Please, thank you.
You would only need to notice that the bylaws are going to be amended. You could review the bylaws without doing that. And then if you see them, you see that they still fit what you'd like to do, then you can just leave it. If you wanted to amend, you could notice it for the next meeting after you reviewed it, and then you can do those amendments.
Okay, so it might be in our best interest to have an agenda item as reviewing bylaws. Just at a future meeting. I have a spot on here in our agenda that I created that allows for us to include like next meeting agenda items. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say like review bylaws, not for the purpose of amending them, but for the purpose of understanding them and understanding what our parameters are. Do people feel okay with that?
Yeah.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, so then that means that we would need to make a motion to suspend the bylaws for the remainder of this officer term or,
It's this,
okay.
so I make a motion to do just that. And
Do you mind saying it into the mic? Cause he's not at the mic. Thank you.
to suspend the bylaws for the election of the chair.
So
Yep.
we have a motion from Daniel, Commissioner Jackson, to suspend the bylaws of the Human Relations Commission for the election of the chair. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? After that, what we just did? Okay. Okay. So do I get to say that even though I'm technically, okay,
So I make
someone else will say it.
yep, I make a motion to elect the chair
As
as Kate Lake
Kat.
Kat, sorry.
It's okay.
Second that.
Do I say that even though, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed to that?
Sorry, I didn't mean to leave you hanging. I was typing.
It's okay. I just wasn't sure if I was allowed to say
apolo-
that.
No, I apologize.
I wasn't sure if I'm allowed to say that because I'm technically not a chair, but I'm technically, okay. So the motion passes to elect me or keep me as your chair of the Human Relations Commission. I appreciate that. And so next time at the next meeting, we will review bylaws. Kind of going back to the August suggestion, do we want an August meeting still? Cause thoughts on the matter is that their city council will be having a discussion on some of the ordinances that we're talking about. And if we don't have time in today's
Yes.
meeting, okay. So can we have a motion to approve a meeting for August 15th
Motion to approve the meeting for August 15th
at 6 o'clock?
at 6 p.m.
Okay. So I have a motion to have a Human Relations Commission regular meeting at 6 p.m. on August 15th. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Already at the last meeting. She's been on for like a year. Cool. Sorry. Maybe a sidebar.
Oh,
Trying to get rid of me?
No, we were trying to make sure we had you. Juanita, no, nobody wants to get rid of you. Everybody wants to keep you, Juanita. It's the
So-
opposite.
August 15th meeting at 6 p.m. and we will be discussing reviewing of bylaws and also some other agenda items I'm sure we'll come up with during the rest of this conversation. Okay, being
Sorry.
mindful,
We had a motion by who and a second by who?
motion was by Justin, Commissioner Harper, second was by Commissioner Dulis.
Thanks.
Am I saying your last name right? Okay. All right, moving on. Being mindful of time, we have around an hour until we like to adjourn the meetings typically. So just want to give people a time check to be respectful of people's time boundaries. So moving on, we're discussing ordinance number 1433, which kind of going back to what City Manager Halenga said, should have been a resolution from the beginning, but we wrote it as an ordinance, which, you know, we did a little bit more above and beyond work. So this one is about enhancing transparency, impartiality, and effectiveness in addressing complaints of discriminatory practices within the city. So this ordinance is what we voted unanimously on to change our complaint process for the city of Ipsy, because currently the complaint process that we have is a written verified complaint affidavit to the city attorney, Mr. Barr, who then reviews the complaint and then gets appropriate people involved to then investigate and do whatever the rest of the ordinance says right now. What we were asking for was a change in that, to have human relations commissioners involved in that process, to kind of remove the individual and the party who serves in protection and defense of the city away from the first initial glance, simultaneously creating a tracking system for us to be able to know how many people in the city are experiencing discrimination or prejudice. Because currently, when we had requested the first memo we received from our city attorney, it said that there wasn't a tracking system to really know how many people, and that there was just a few, which I felt was problematic. And I think that we definitely need to know how many people are complaining about this if we want to study effectively what is happening in our city, to provide those recommendations that city manager spoke of earlier. So I'm not sure if folks had an opportunity to review Mr. Barr's memo. But
I only included it once for saving of paper.
yeah, that's okay. I believe it's the one.
Memorandum.
Yes, okay, it's this one right here that's HRC proposed amendments dated June 12th, 2024. That's the memo that we received. So I attended the city council meeting where they first initially discussed this this ordinance amendment that we brought forward. And majority of the feedback was wanting to ensure that people, if we are trying to be involved in a process where we are receiving complaints, that we are educated and knowledgeable of how to even do mediation. And so one of the things our ordinance says now is that we can offer mediation. Already it says that, but whether or not we feel like we're suitable for that is a different question, which to me, I feel like could be a whole conversation of a subcommittee potentially that has, you know, maybe more restorative practice experts involved in that for an external kind of coordination, if you will. But a majority of that was the conversation. Some people were wondering, can we change the tracking process without necessarily changing the complaint process? I'm not sure how folks feel about that as a conversation. But I just kind of want to open up the table for discussion about this ordinance in particular. And if people want to talk and it becomes like a really robust conversation, I will just write down who is talking so we don't interrupt each other. But go ahead.
I want to look over this.
What would be the most helpful right now? Would it be helpful if we reviewed the memo
I was gonna
together?
say, should we go line by line, has by the letters,
Okay.
or just in general?
We could do a glance, or
We've had it for over a month.
Barr could share.
Recognize.
Okay. Sorry. Do you mind, sorry, approaching?
It's a little vigorous on my yard work and my hip hurts me.
Oh, I apologize. Is there
I'd
a way
like
you
to
could-
sit if I might, but since I've written that memo, I've done some additional work on it, and if you'd like, I could give you an overview of the process.
Okay.
That would work.
Yes, please. The current one or the? Okay. Thank you. Sorry about your hip. Yeah, please take a mic.
My name is John Barr. And I'm the city attorney and have been for some time. So if it's okay with the commission, what I'd like to do in looking at these ordinances is start at a 30,000-foot view and then drill down to where we are now. Because I have a feeling that the commission may be missing the mark a little bit. So here we go. And I promise I'll tie all of this up. Many years ago, as you know, we were a colony of England. We had the Revolutionary War. And then we had a constitution that was prepared. Well, first we had the Articles of Confederation, then the Constitution. And the U.S. Constitution sets the stage for all of the laws in the United States. And the U.S. Constitution provides that all the federal power is in the federal government, in the Congress and the president and the courts and so on. But there's a provision in the Constitution that said all of the powers that are not specifically given to the federal government are reserved to the states. Okay? The federal government has their power. Everything else belongs to the states. And Michigan is a state. It was admitted to the Union, and Michigan has its own constitution. And there's been a couple of them over the years. The last one was in 1963. So in the Constitution, it sets out what the laws of the state of Michigan will be, the Constitution and the laws. And it provides that all of the law is centered in the state legislature up in Lansing. There's no provision that says that the city of Ypsilanti has any power at all, except if it's given by the legislature. And so the legislature divided the state up into different political entities. We have counties, we have townships, we have villages, we have fourth class cities, and we have home rule cities. And all of those, except for home rule cities, have statutes which set out what their powers and what they can do, law from Lansing. Ypsilanti is a home rule city, so the legislature said in the Home Rule Cities Act that the city can have its own constitution. We can make up how we want to have our laws. And that's called the city charter.
Mhm.
And there are several city charters that have been instituted in the city. And the city charter sets up the form of government that we have in the city. And what we have in the city of Ypsilanti by the city charter is called a city manager form of government. And our city charter says that we have that the city is divided into wards, and each ward has 2 representatives, and that we'll have a city council of 6 people plus a mayor, 7 people who are the city council members. And then the city charter also says that all of the power in the city, all of the power of the city is concentrated in the city council, all of it. And so it's only when the city council does something that power comes out from the city council, according to the charter. Now, the city council can make laws and make rules in 2 fashions. They can do it by passing a motion, which is effective that day, but does not have the force of law generally. Or they can do it by passing an ordinance, and an ordinance has teeth in it that can be enforced. And an ordinance requires two readings. It can't be just one, there have to be 2 readings. So the city charter also said, well, there was before 1994, we had 11 people on the council. And for a lot of reasons, the city charter commission decided that was too many, so they reduced it to 7. And they also provided a couple of things that were new in the city charter. And one of the things that they did is they put in standards of ethical conduct for city officials. And so if you look at the city charter, it says things you can do and things you can't do, and you can't use your own personal interests. You can't use property for your own benefit and different things like that. And it also said we had to do 2 things within 6 months. We had to set up an ethics ordinance and an ethics commission. And we had to set up a human relations commission. And so that was done after 1994, came to my office, my staff drafted it, council approved it. So we had an ethics ordinance and we had a human relations commission ordinance. And the city charter sets out says all the power in the city is concentrated in the council, but they can delegate some of that power to different parts, staff, police, fire, all that sort of things. And they also delegated what the Human Relations Commission can do, because the city charter said we had to have it. And this is what the city charter says. Council may create or discontinue boards and commissions. They have to have the Human Relations Commissions. And boards and commissions shall not administer any activity, department, or agency of the city government unless specifically authorized by statute. And that statute refers to things like the Board of Review, the Downtown Development Authority, and different things like that. So it sets out we can have commissions, but they can't really do any activity for the city. They can't take any action in the name of the city. Why would that be, you think? Well, it's quite because people say, well, we've got a democracy. Well, we don't. We have a democratic republic. And what that means is we vote for our representatives who do the work, who do the activity of the city. We vote for the city council. And we hold them responsible, and we can hold them responsible at the ballot box. If we don't like what they're doing, we can get somebody else. And so this provision says, in addition to the council of 7 people, we can have boards and commissions, but the board and commission is not elected, and so they don't have any power to do an activity. But what do they do? Well, the city council is only 7 people, and 7 people is probably not enough to run a city of this size or any size. And so the charter says we can go out into the public, and we can have boards and commissions that can advise the city council what they think should happen. The commission can't do it, but they can advise the city council that they should look at things and do things. And that happened back in, I think it was in the 80s. I can't remember exactly. But there was a group in Eastern Michigan University called Tri-Pride that went to Hanson's Printing to get some tickets made. And Hanson's wouldn't print the tickets because Tri-Pride was a gay outfit. So they went to the city, they went to city council, and city council said, okay, we've got a Human Relations Commission. We'll send this hot potato to the city Human Relations Commission, which they did. And at that time, I think the chair of the Human Relations Commission was a guy by the name of Norm Kennedy, who was a smart cookie. And so the Human Relations Commission did what the charter says. They had meetings, they had public meetings, and they had hundreds of people come on this, and they had, I don't know, 2 or 3 meetings. And Norm Kennedy said, okay, we're all going to be adults at these meetings. I'm not going to have any laughing, stamping of feet, whistling, clapping, cheering, denigrating people. We're going to be citizens. We're going to be civilized. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk. I'm going to have one side talk now and the other side talk next. And they went on like that, and it was a civilized set of meetings. And after everything was done, the question was, should the city council pass an anti-discrimination ordinance which protected gays? And the Human Relations Commission voted 5-4, no, we don't need it. So it went up to city council passed it anyway. They amended the anti-discrimination ordinance to include gays, even though the Human Relations Commission said that it wasn't needed. And so they gave their advice, and that's what the ordinance says, but the council decided to do something different. And why am I going into all of this stuff? Because from my perspective, I think the Human Relations Commission has gotten off on a little kink down the wrong turn. And let me give you an illustration. What ordinance are we talking about now?
You said you could tie in all 3, and we're talking about the complaint process, right?
Complaint process, okay. The city charter also sets out for a city attorney, and it says there will be a city attorney or a legal officer who will handle all of the litigation for the city. And so my office handles all of the prosecution of any ordinance violation in the city. Reckless driving, drunk driving, malicious destruction of property, urinating in public, all of the ordinances in the city, that have to do with conduct of the people. If there's a violation, the police investigate it, or there's another investigation, and it comes to my office, and I look at it and I decide what to do with it, whether I prosecute it or not. That's in the charter. That's the way that it is. And so when the ordinance for the Human Relations Commission was created, it follows the charter, says that you will have the right to have meetings and study things and so on. Well, here the charter, the ordinance for the city says, the mission of the Human Relations Commission is to study problems of discrimination, make recommendations to city council, enlist cooperation of others, cooperate with others, promote mutual understanding, issue publications, conduct public forums, accept grants, and study patterns of discrimination. It doesn't say anything about complaint process or hearing complaints or dealing with complaints or anything like that. Nothing like that is in the city charter or the city ordinance. But when I did it, when I prepared the draft, I included that, well, the city human relationships might have some ability to make these things work, to make it easier for the public. If you had two people this, and before we dropped the hammer and brought them to court or anything like that, maybe there could be a mediation where they could come before the Human Relations Commission and talk it out. Nothing would be legal, I guess. Nothing would be have the force of law, but they could come to a settlement. And that's quite common in the courts now. And so the ordinance where you suggest that we change that all around and give the City Human Relations Commission power over complaints is just not authorized in law. There's no power to do it, okay?
Can we ask you questions in
Yes.
between, just so we don't lose train of thought? I think there's a bit of miscommunication potentially between our commission and your office, maybe somewhere along the way. We never intended to be like the ones deciding ultimately whether there's a complaint that's that's valid or not. What we're asking for, and maybe this needs to be implemented better with feedback into the ordinance, so open to suggestions and feedback. What, from my understanding, what we're wanting is to be able to have a view of what the complaints are, de-identified, mind you, because it's not our business to know who exactly is filing a complaint, and that's protected information. But we're wanting to know how we can have a say in that process with you, because as of right now, there isn't a tracking system. You said there's a few complaints that you have received. And how many times has mediation been an option that has actually been utilized by the HRC as it is now? I in no way I do not want us to go against city charter. I want us to abide by the laws. And I also don't know what actions we're trying to take in the name of the city. So I just want to clear that up. So maybe we can come and come up with a better alternative, because that's not, from my impression, what we were trying to do.
Right, no.
That is certainly a good question. And the answer to it is you do not have any power to get involved in the complaint process. There's nothing in the charter or the ordinance that says that. You have a little bit of power for mediation. There's two different questions. One is tracking, and I have no problem with setting up a tracking system, but I can tell you that after 1994 and the Hanson's Printing Company, I can't think of one case that has come to the city that would be referred to the City Human Relations Commission for a complaint on discrimination against gay people or any of the other protected classes. It just has not been there. And why I don't know, but I can tell you one reason is that there is in the state, the Civil Rights Commission, there's the EEOC, there are federal courts and so on. And what's happened is we have had some complaints from different people about discrimination, but it hasn't come to the Human Relations Commission. It's gone to those organizations that have the power to grant judgments and to have the power of to do things. You know,
Mhm.
Human Relations Commission, one reason it's set up the way it is to study and advise, and not to do complaints and not to try people and different things like that, is because it doesn't have the power.
Commissioner Harper, did you want to share something before I asked another follow-up?
No, I was just gonna like piggyback what I was just saying. Like, I think more than anything, we just wanted a collaborative approach. I was thinking, so you pretty much said what I was thinking already.
if I may, I was gonna say,
Juanita,
oh, Juanita, I'm sorry, I didn't see you, Juanita. Please, Vice Chair.
You gotta look this way every now and
I will, thank you.
So, it's hard for me to imagine that it's no complaints in the city of Ypsilanti for this.
Well, there are complaints, but they don't come, I mean, they go, as I say, to the to the Civil Rights Department, to the EEOC, and so on.
Okay. And I don't think we're looking to be lawyers or litigators or have the power to make a judgment. I think what we're looking for is to see what those complaints are that's
Mhm.
up to the city of Ypsilanti as far as discrimination.
And
Well,
that can help with our
and
study.
as well as, having that tracking
Right.
method.
And thinking about it, that makes some sense. We could set up a tracking system, even if they were filed in the, say, the Civil Rights Division. We could make up a tracking system so that could be shared with the Human Relations Commission, that there is this complaint in most cases.
That would be great.
That'd be
There
awesome,
would be
yeah.
some privacy issues, something like that. That would be no problem.
The other thought too, to echo what Commissioner or Vice Chair House was saying is that I think part of it is people don't even, the ways to complain and file a formal complaint wasn't even put on the website until this commission asked for it.
that's exactly.
And that's been since the 90s,
One-
That's a
potentially.
different question.
Yeah, so that's not on you, I could imagine, but like maybe people didn't know how to complain, where to complain, or even file that if it's worth their while. And so I don't think that we don't have a discrimination issue in the city. I definitely think that is happening. I have neighbors who are not being able to get housing because of their conviction in history, which is why the Fair Chance Housing Ordinance is so important to this commission. And so it is interesting thought to think about how we can maybe create some type of chain of communication between this body or the city and those other groups to be able to know what the complaints are rooted in.
Well, that would be no problem. We're the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act coordinators. We keep a list of all of those. And so I could do the same thing with complaints, although I've told you that there aren't very few, if any, complaints. Now, and whether or not it's on the website, it's not in my purview, but I'd certainly have no problem of putting it on the website. Now, one thing that the Human Relations Commission is charged with is to study problems of communication and issue publications. And there's nothing in the law that says you can't advise the public, that you can't have a public comment or a public information system and do that. There are a number of things like with having studies and publications and things that you could do.
I think that would be really helpful and strategic if we can help move that forward in that way. And getting in, as we were talking here about making sure that we're, one, able to be informed of what are those complaints. If we've been tasked with the, the commission to study the complaints and the challenges that our community faces, and to be a mediator between the community and the
Right.
council. So
I think that's good. One other thing I'd like to mention is that there is a fair housing commission, I think, or something in Ann Arbor that will take fair housing complaints, and that they do. And they have the power of law. They have teeth in their ordinance, in their laws, that they can do things. And I suspect that rather than send it to me for the city to handle, they go to the Fair Housing Commission, which has the staff and the resources, and the ability to make that stick.
And they would be able to, represent, citizens in Ypsilanti.
I'm sorry.
It would be able to represent citizens in Ypsilanti.
Oh, yes, the whole county. Yes, absolutely. I could give you some stories about that, but they're very good and aggressive on what they do.
So moving forward with what we're talking about, what are our next steps to kind of get that process going so we can have access to that information?
Okay, well, what I will do is I'll go back and talk to my staff and figure out a way to develop a system, and I'll coordinate with the city manager and the clerk to make it part of the system.
Do we need to make a motion for that? Or no?
But I don't,
Okay, I'm just
I'd be
asking.
happy to do it, but you can make a motion if you want.
Okay, but I'll trust your word that you're gonna do
Right.
it.
But in any event, the ordinance that we're talking about, I don't believe is legal.
Okay, so,
Long and the short.
okay, and there are a couple of other things that we added to that ordinance that, I'm not sure, I'm not sure exactly which parts are illegal, because I know that my impression is that ordinances can change and be amended.
Sure.
And so as of right now, the complaint process may be one way, but we have the ability to ask council to amend that to better serve our community. Is that right?
You can do that, but what you have to be is specific what you want to do and how you want to do it. And when you do it, you have to stick within the parameters of the charter and the ordinance.
Okay. So rather than, how do people feel about, with this ordinance in particular, rather than asking council to review it again for second reading, if we implement a process that Mr. Barr has said with his staff? What do people feel like? What are y'all's thoughts on this subject specifically of how we move forward?
I think what Mr. Barr shared was really helpful, and I think that we should move forward with that. I think it's really practical and can help to address some of the felt needs within our community by getting that information and being made aware of those things so we can respond.
Okay, we can do that. Now, there may be, I'll look at it carefully. There may be some privacy concerns some places, but I'll
De-identify it?
I'll set up a system to do that. And I'll share it with you, with council, with the mayor, city clerk and so on.
Do you have a suggestion on the wording then of how we can make this easier for people to file a complaint so we're not missing the demographic of people that are.
Yes, I can give you a couple of examples. One, you can put it on the website. I think it may be.
Yeah, we
it may
did,
be
yeah.
there already.
Mhm.
The city sends out a monthly newsletter. You can ask that it be put in the monthly newsletter. And one other possibility is, and it'd be up to Yucca if they would do that, but you could also ask to have an insert put in the water bills when they go out, so you reach all of the people in the community that have water systems. There's a number of ways you can do that. Another way is you can draft a press release and send it to the newspapers and the TV programs and so on, saying that
Here's the process, et
here's the
cetera.
process. The City Human Relations Commission studied it. They agreed that the public needs more knowledge on it, and here's how you can do it.
Justin, you had a comment. Did that answer what you were gonna say?
Yeah, they're answering it.
I have a clarifying question. So we're talking about the tracking and the transparency of everything. Part of our initial concern was that we put ourselves in the shoes of someone making a complaint, and where they make the complaint, we read that it goes to your office, and then you guys decide, is this really a complaint? And then that would go to the next step. And I think some of us were worried that this seems like your office has the only one that has any control over the voice of the people, that we won't hear it if your office doesn't actually dignify it as a complaint.
Mm.
Where along the step will we get transparency?
If you want that power, you have to be a prosecutor. That's the way the system works. It's not when somebody alleges a criminal offense, it's not a public vote of who is that, yes or no. It goes to the prosecutor who's been appointed by the powers that be, the city council or the county or whatever, or elected, someone elected, and they have that power. I have that power.
I don't think, Brittany, Commissioner Doulis, you're asking to prosecute. You're asking to just view what it is the complaint is so we
Oh,
can better
Also
understand.
not in like a power tug of war view. I realize you're the city attorney and I'm a volunteer commissioner.
You have,
So I understand that you have a lot more power in this situation.
I'm sorry
you've-
if I gave that
You've
impression.
put it in the memo, so I understand all your
It's a question-
powers.
It's a question of authority.
So but my question was, so will we get transparency on that complaint after your office says, yes, this is a complaint, or does,
Okay, what I can do, I've already said I'll set up a tracking system, then I'll share that with you. I can give you the information as long as it's not prohibited by law. And I can tell you that we are Freedom of Information Act coordinators for the city, so we get a lot of complaints, a lot of requests for information of stuff that's in the city. but there are certain things that we can and cannot submit based on privacy and other types of things. And so you'd have to understand that this system would still honor that type of thing, and you'll get what's legal.
Or legal. I think what, if I'm not mistaken, it would be, you would just need to remove name, number,
We
address.
can redact that.
Yeah, there's things that we would obviously want to be redacted for privacy reasons, but I think the general, is it a gender identity complaint? Is it a gender like sexuality, race, discrimination of complaints for people with conviction histories? Like
Right.
those things I think is what we want to understand more, is like how many of those are coming through, and what are their race, what are their demographics, what's their age, all of these different things. We want to be able to know who is, complaining to the city, and what are the next steps the city is taking for that complaint.
But I think maybe that's not even Brittany's question. I think Brittany's question is like, if you guys, and maybe this isn't happening, and so maybe that's the confusion, but like, it sounds like, at least by the way the ordinance reads, that perhaps you guys are determining whether it's a complaint or not a complaint.
Right, exactly.
And so,
Yes,
and
exactly.
so we're curious, I think what she's saying is, will the things that are determined they're not complaints, will those go in that log? Whether they're a complaint or not a
Well,
complaint?
I would expect that the issue would be in there that there was a complaint and whether it was valid or not.
That's what I was asking for too, like maybe the outcome of the complaint.
Mhm.
Like, was it progressed?
Right.
Was it deferred? Was
So
it?
A lot of these things, as I say, go on to a different agency. They may go to
Sure,
the
that makes sense. Like it went to EEOC or something like
right,
that.
yeah.
It went,
And that might be
somebody
even
else.
helpful for us to
Sure.
know too, of like, where are the complaints going? Are there a lot going to employment? Are there a lot going to civil rights?
Yeah.
Like, that's really important information for us to know.
where it's
too.
going. I think
Yeah,
that's
Cause we can collect
that
more
data,
data
right,
if we
like, we
need
can-
to, right?
have for research.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Barr, you're going to ask your staff to create a tracking system, and then you are going, in this tracking system, we're not going to only have access to seeing who's filed a complaint, period. It'll also be whose complaints went forward and who complaints did not, and where they went.
when you say whose, I'm not
Right.
sure.
De-identified, de-identified. Thank
Yes,
you.
we'll set something up and I'll give you the parameters.
Thank you.
Unidentified who's.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other thoughts before we move to the next?
I just wanted to say, I just really appreciated how you historically brought context to where we are today. And that
was
was
fun.
brilliantly done.
I personally love the history of federalism and just the explanation of that. I was here for it.
Yeah, thank you for funneling us down.
Any other thoughts before we move on? Trying to do a better job at this way. I apologize again. All right, moving on, to the next one, which is eliminating ambiguous language that inadvertently permits discrimination against people with felony and misdemeanor criminal records, which is ordinance number 1434. Council had their feedback June 4th, or they had the meeting on June 4th where they provided their feedback at first reading. And there's also a memo from Mr. Barr again, so please.
All right, and in this ordinance, what you're doing is you're adding to the non-discrimination ordinance the category of criminal conviction. And at the present time, well, let me back up a little bit. People talk about discrimination, and discrimination as a word usually has a bad connotation. But the fact of the matter is, as we go through life, everybody discriminates every day, because discrimination is just the decision to make one decision after or another. And the discrimination that we don't want is discrimination or making that decision based on illegal or improper or unfounded concerns. For instance, when you go to a grocery store and you buy a bag of apples, you might look and you discriminate and you say, well, that bag is not as good as this bag, so I'm going to take this bag. And that's perfectly okay. There's nothing wrong with that. However, if you go to hire someone and you hire someone that is of a different religion and you don't hire them because of that, then that is illegal discrimination. And so we have to be very careful with the words that we use. And in regard to your communication to City Council with this particular ordinance, some of the words that are used are kind of loaded words. They have emotional content, and they're not necessarily really descriptive of the situation. And what you have to do when you're drafting ordinances or when you're communicating to council, in my opinion, you should be very careful of the words that you use, and you should be looking at the subject, not necessarily some opinion that this is whatever. So in this particular ordinance, what my I can't remember what I exactly put in the memo, but my suggestion is that this is, first of all, not necessary at this time, because we have something known as expungement. And there's a series of new laws on the books for somebody that's convicted of a crime within certain periods of time can go to the court and get that crime expunged. And so it's no longer on their record. And the benefit of that is that there's a court decision on it when the or the convicted person goes to the court and says, I'm rehabilitated, I'd like to have that expunged, the court will make a decision. And so that is a protection for the public. What this ordinance says is that the private person, the woman that has a duplex, can't ask if the person she's going to rent to has a criminal conviction, which is not present in the law now. This would be plowing new law for just the city, and is not in accordance with the present ordinances. And I think it's much better to rely on the expungement and having the court involved in it than taking the right away from the homeowner or the rental agent or the renter, the landlord, and saying, well, no, you can't do that. And there can be, well, there could be some bad decisions on it. But anyway, that's my objection to that ordinance.
Are you referring to the one that removes the loophole that says unless there's a direct relationship between et cetera, et cetera? Is that the one? Okay.
Okay, now let me just stay for a minute.
Yes, please. Please go ahead. And I also want to address I appreciate you clarifying the appropriate process for us to create resolution or ordinance suggestions. We didn't know that when we first wrote
Let
that.
me talk about loopholes.
Go ahead.
What is a loophole?
Are you rhetorical or?
No, I'm asking, what is a loophole?
A loophole for me is when there is something that is created, but there's a caveat to that inadvertently still impacts people negatively. So for example,
when
we're
you
saying you can't discriminate against people with felony or misdemeanor convictions, but here's how you can, because we actually don't have those words defined. We don't have the words direct relationship defined. We don't have the words unreasonable risk to property or safety defined. Therefore, to get to your agreement, you're right. You can't explicitly discriminate against someone for their religious preferences or beliefs or race, but people do that all the time implicitly, and they use everything else but their actual identity to do
How
that.
do you know that?
That's a great question. That's a personal experience that sometimes I lived as one of the gays that you mentioned.
You've been discriminated against?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm
Have-
sure I'm not
have
one of the
you
only
filed
ones.
Complaints?
I don't know where to file complaints, but I do now know. I appreciate that. But my
but
point is
we have-
that those are the words that weren't defined that we were calling a loophole.
We have to be careful when we use these words loophole. Generally, what a loophole means is it's something in an ordinance that you don't like. And in this particular case, it is an exception, but it is an exception that you can make you can discriminate against someone with a criminal record if it affects the job or the position that you're dealing with. And I mentioned to council,
Sure.
if you couldn't do that and somebody that had been an embezzler and convicted embezzler came and applied to be the treasurer of the city, you couldn't discriminate and put that person out because of that. And do you want a convicted embezzler handling public money? If someone applies to a day school.
We actually had that happen in the city of Ipsy with our recent city manager. So I don't want that exactly happening
So-
again.
so-
But my question is, can we define those words then? Can we leave the exception and define the words? Because if those words are not defined, anything can be considered a direct relationship. That's my point.
All right, I can try to do that. Yes, I'll look at that. I can try to do that.
I have a
Uh,
question. Didn't we try to mimic the city of Ann Arbor with this?
Not with this one in particular. That was the fair chance housing and the complaint process. Yes.
Let me mention something about the city of Ann Arbor. maybe we should move, well, let me, when we talk about the fair chance, I'll talk about that. Are we done with this one? Is that?
So you will, do you want me to make a motion to make a memo to your office requesting that?
Sure, why not?
Okay, do I have a motion? Am I allowed to make motions as the chair or?
No, you should.
Okay, I didn't think so. I just wanted to confirm. Can I have a motion to request Mr. Barr, city attorney, to further define the words direct relationship and unreasonable risk for our non-discrimination ordinance, section 58-61 intent.
So direct relationship and what other words?
Unreasonable risk to property or safety. Did anyone make a motion? I'm sorry, I couldn't see.
Do I have to say all of that?
I just said it for you. You can
Motion.
just-
And just say I
Okay.
move.
I move.
Okay,
I can say second.
I second.
perfect. And then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, and any opposed? Great, thank you, Mr. Barr. We look forward to seeing what you come back with those definitions, because I think that was our main concern, which is why the words loophole was used, but I appreciate you being willing to take the swing at that and bring back something for us, so thank you.
Thank you.
Do we feel comfortable moving on to the third item? Okay.
Yes.
All right, the third item, ordinance, or fourth item, ordinance number 1435, an ordinance entitled, an ordinance to amend Article 3 discrimination of Chapter 58, Human Relations by adding a fair chance housing section. And so first thing was to discuss council feedback from the June 18th and July 16th regular council meetings, to kind of go into that discussion, to bring back some concerns I heard from the public, to address those concerns from the public. Because, yeah, I just want to make sure that we do that. Mr. Barr, did you have other things you wanted to share? Or are you coming back? Okay, you're going to come back. Okay, perfect. So first of all, I really want people to feel excited about, the fair chance housing ordinance. IPSI's not the first to want to create this. There's other areas in the community that, and the state, that have already done, in the nation. For example, not Grand Rapids, excuse me. The toolkit has a list of the different items. I apologize for not having them memorized, but Ann Arbor, Kalamazoo, Jackson. And so really getting excited, trying to tie into these words behind our head, pride, diversity, and heritage. So I'm hoping that maybe we can talk about what the main concerns were of the public and how we can really proactively address those concerns and provide education on what the ordinance amendment was, what the intention was behind the ordinance amendment. That way, maybe we can clear up any misinformation or miscommunication. One of the things I had thought about, that I shared via email, I want to say publicly, is like maybe a fact sheet or a Mythbuster sheet, because one of the main concerns I heard in the last 2 council meetings was that there would be no background check at all, which is not accurate. So I just wanted us to provide maybe more thoughts and information on that, because I did a comparative analysis between the Fair Chance Housing Act that was brought forward at June 18th and the one that was brought forward July 16th. Between those two, the first reading and the second reading, there was feedback given from the city council, from Councilmember McLean and a couple of other council members, that was valid feedback that we wanted to implement into this ordinance to be able to provide more exceptions and detail oriented of like what is included, what are the background checks, how this process actually is outlined. Unfortunately, it was put on the agenda for Tuesday's meeting for second reading before we could discuss feedback and implement that feedback to make sure that it's a really robust, less confusing ordinance. And so there were only really 2 differences that I noted between the two. So not a whole lot of feedback implemented, but there's still a great deal of feedback to implement still. And I just wanted to bring that forward, that one of the main concerns I heard was that there wouldn't be a complaint wouldn't be a background check period, which is not how I read or how we intended to write the ordinance. So Mr. Barr, can you clarify anything that maybe is misaligned with that?
Like me to talk about the.
Yes, please.
I had my law clerk do some research on this ordinance. And the history of the ordinance is that there was a House bill in the state legislature passed, or that was presented with this idea. And it never went anywhere in the House yet. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But the state is considering it, and they haven't done anything on it. Apparently Ann Arbor, the city of Ann Arbor, picked it up and passed an ordinance. And as I understand it, you may have had some people or person come and talk about this ordinance
Nation outside.
and decided to adopt it. And the problem with the ordinance, one of the main problems with the ordinance as it stands now, I've been an attorney for many, many years. And when I look at the ordinance, I do not understand it.
Okay.
Now, one of the primary functions and primary decisions that a person drafting an ordinance should make is that it should be drafted in such a way that the ordinary citizen looking at it can determine what they can and can't do. And looking at this ordinance drafted in Ann Arbor, I can't tell that. And maybe I could if I spent an hour or two studying it, because it refers back to this is an exception, this is an exception, doesn't say what the exception is, refers to sections. There's a provision that says person is defined as decided in section blank of the code.
Right. It wasn't filled out completely. I know.
Is that the Ann Arbor code? Is the IPSI code?
It's supposed to be
have
IPSI.
something in it that defines a person? I
Right.
don't know. I'd have to go back and look at it. This particular ordinance, the numbering is not consistent.
I agree.
Okay, the form does not follow the city format code. It's a much more complicated and convoluted code. When we draft ordinances for the city, I'm thinking of the average person looking at that ordinance. I want them to be able to understand it without having to go to an attorney to interpret it for them.
I agree. I wish that was how all ordinances were. We didn't write this one.
Yeah,
This was
yeah,
what city staff wrote.
It was copied from Ann Arbor. I get it.
Correct, yeah.
About Ann Arbor.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
So a person looking at it doesn't have a clear idea. This ordinance does say that the complaint goes to the city attorney. And I thought that you were not happy with that type of situation, but that is what the law would be. If there was a complaint, it would come to me. Nothing in the complaint refers to the Human Relations Commission or what their role is not. Now, it doesn't take into effect the fact of expungement. And as I told you, expungement, you have a criminal record, you can get rid of that record, so this would not apply. It wouldn't show up when you apply to get a job or apply to go to get a rental or something like that. But you have to wait a while to get it.
Yeah.
You have to be a good person, and you have to get a court to approve it. So what this does is say even, that the landlord can't ask that if the person hasn't had their thing expunged. Well, why not? I don't know. So the two things I have in mind. One is, and I don't set policy for the city. Okay, I give the city my legal advice. I don't give them my personal advice. I don't set the policy. They decide whether they're going to have an ordinance or not. I try to give them my best legal advice. And this ordinance, as it's set up now, I could not approve for the reasons that I've said and some others. Now, Ann Arbor, sometimes people think, well, we can just copy what another city has done, like somebody in San Francisco or Seattle or Ann Arbor. Well, Ann Arbor doesn't have our city charter. They have a different city charter. They have 11 people on their council. They have other things in their charter, and they are a rich city. We are not a rich city. And this says that it's going to put more workload on the city, and the state is looking at it already. We've already got the expungement. So legally, I question whether there's a need for this. And aside from that, I cannot approve the form of the ordinance because I don't understand it.
Okay, glad we got that cleared up. Sorry it took us so long to do that. Happy to hear the feedback that you've given. We did not write this. We did the other ones. We would love to take another stab at this, particularly implementing the feedback that council had mentioned. One of which, the formatting, I agree, needs to be more streamlined with City of Ipsy's formatting. But for example, under exceptions, number 2, currently it says the denial of housing by a housing provider because of a past criminal conviction may be based on state and federal requirements, but it doesn't say anything else, which is very ambiguous. And I literally was just talking about how I hate ambiguity. So I think it's important for us to amend number 2 to potentially read, however people feel, to say the denial of housing by a housing provider because of a past criminal conviction may be based only on state and federal requirements, including guidelines issued by the Department of Housing and Urban Development and Michigan state laws governing tenant screening and criminal history, because that gets to the point of the concerns you were mentioning with people who are on the sex registry. There's other issues. And so trying to outline specifically what these exceptions would be, and to answer, this process never got rid of complaints or background checks in general. What it's asking for, which actually we need to specify a timeline as well. I'm noticing that that's not in here, and we met a presentation that had a timeline, which would be nice to specify in this so people know what we're thinking and what the presentation we received was. But what it's saying is the person will be able to get an offer, and then based on that offer, should they accept, then there's a background check that can be ran. And once that,
Read the steps.
Yeah,
I
we-
mean, they're written
they're lit-
here in the back.
yeah, let's go ahead and do that if you don't mind, because we've done it at other meetings, but some people don't have the capacity to meet all the time, and I get that because timing is valuable, but please, yeah,
Can I just make a point?
please.
Or, just for clarity's sake, in this, in this discussion, are we looking to process through better verbiage to be in compliance with the ordinance, so it can be done appropriately? And are we taking that time right now to solve that problem by trying that? Or are we just talking about the fact that we need to work on this, and then collectively outside of this meeting, we figure out a new proposal, and then we work with,
I think all those things matter.
so that's my question.
Well, Commissioner Harper, you, and then Commissioner Vice Chair House.
I was just saying, and I think we should be doing both of that, but yeah, ultimately we need to work together to figure out the language to go ahead and fill in those gaps and those nuances.
Right.
Because I'm just looking at the time, and
Sure.
I just want to honor the time for everybody.
I appreciate that.
We need to table that part of problem solving to another time.
I don't think we need to table it specifically, but Commissioner Vice Chair House, did you want to say something before I suggested? Okay, sorry, I thought I saw you looking. I was gonna say, rather than going through and labeling what we would like it to say, maybe we could identify the points of confusion that need more pulling apart and flushing out. And that way, when we do meet at our August 15th meeting, we will have a better version that's more in line with the form available for viewing and review for us to have a discussion.
We'll just ask too, with, and this is putting more on Mr. Barr, but it seemed the way that you described it is that there is a number of different technical ways that that it has to be written in order to make sure that it's legal. That's what I'm understanding.
Yeah.
And you talked about the complexity of that as well, here as well. And so what I'm wondering is, like, as we're able to bring I don't think any of us are attorneys. And so I think we can bring suggestions, but I think we really would probably need to have the right verbiage, either your office or an attorney to help give us the right words to
I
say.
love that you said that, because something that Commissioner Harper and I were discussing was the idea of someone from the Fair Housing Center to provide a presentation to us at our August 15th meeting, because they do housing advocacy work and they're attorneys as well. So they have a different perspective outside of Mr. Barrs as well, who has a different perspective from a different viewpoint. I'd be happy to ask someone from that center if they would be willing to provide feedback on this current, thing that we have in front of us that needs some work on. And then before, the next time it goes to city council is set for August 27th. And so that would give us some time before it goes back to city council again for them to vote on it, to really make sure that we're taking into consideration the concerns of the public while also keeping pride, diversity, and heritage in the name of, in the spirit of the ordinance.
Sure.
I
for
think
sure.
I'm sorry, I think we have to, though, take in mind that, Ann Arbor is working differently than Ipsy. And so we need to be closely more related to what Ipsy is doing and look at that verbiage, not putting it up against Ann Arbor and working with what we have here. If we want to revamp or make suggestions on how we feel this verbiage that we have in Ipsy should be, because Ann Arbor has more tools, like you said. Ann Arbor has more teeth. Ann Arbor has more whatever it needs to get the job done. So they done it.
But isn't this more than just in Ann Arbor? Wasn't it also, I think you just said in Jackson and in Kalamazoo? where
Yeah,
Jackson's a
the,
bench Prison and is,
I think what
Not a well-
Commissioner or Vice Chair House is saying is we modeled this one from the Ann Arbor one, but there are fair chance housing ordinances in other locations as well. But I do agree that there was a lot needing to be added. And the whole point was that it was just gonna get feedback from council, and we never got a chance to implement that feedback. And so I'm really grateful that we're getting a chance to do that, because I really want to take truthfully into consideration what people are saying. And I want to clear up a lot of the confusion that exists around it. So I think that having Fair Housing Center present at our August 15th meeting would be helpful. I also think us thinking about where those points of confusion are, specifically around like creating like a myths fact sheet. I'm happy. I know, David, you like flyers, or not David, Daniel, Commissioner Jack, you like flyers. If you would like to work on something with me, I'm happy to help with that, or if anyone else.
because even this one where it's just
Right.
spelled out plainly in a chronological format so everyone can understand.
Is that posted on the public? Is that on the website in our agenda packet? It should be, right?
You-
The Nation Outside
Oh,
presentation?
it might not be, because I don't know if I got it ahead of time.
This-
Okay, can we put that on our website? Because that, it would be really helpful
How
for,
the rental application process will work.
yeah, that would be awesome for the public to see that, because I think that would help clear up some confusion too. Because the main concerns were that people were never going to be able to background check again, and that would increase rising of rent, which would make people who do have criminal convictions, everyone would assume that everyone does, and then that actually makes people get more targeted. That was a big concern, and so we don't want any of that to happen. We want confusion to be nipped in the bud, and so,
Yeah.
I'll see.
People
I'll
worried
see if
about
it's there.
liability.
It might-
Okay.
It might be there from that time. I don't remember.
Maybe it was like 2 or 3 meetings ago.
Yeah,
I think.
I'll check and see.
okay. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
In my opinion, this ordinance should be put to bed. I don't think it's worth revising. What I would recommend you do is follow the charter and study the problem, bring in the fair housing people, bring in the board of realtors, bring in some landlords, big and small, and find out, what you want to do, and then you advise city council on what you recommend. Then an ordinance be drafted, and then the city council can have an ordinance prepared. Or if you want to do that hard work, you could prepare an ordinance and send it up. But I'd like to mention one thing is that one of the well-known economists said, in dealing with things like this, there are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. And if you take something away from somebody here, if you give it to somebody here, you're taking it away from somebody there. So you have to consider all of those things before you make a decision on, passing an ordinance that could have dramatic effects. And so
What trade-offs are we doing real fast, just for
Well,
clarity?
what you're doing is you're taking away the right of a landlord to do certain.
How
things.
so?
They can't do a criminal.
Yes.
Wait, they
it-
can.
it's-
That's what you're spreading. That's the part that I'm having an
You're
issue
just
with, Mr.
ignorant
Barr.
to the actual.
It's in the
Yeah.
process that they can do that.
Have you read this?
It's not clear from the ordinance.
Then let's revise that. Councilmember
So-
King,
I just want to make sure that we are all speaking at one time, so everybody can be heard. That is all I wanted.
So yeah, I think the collaborative approach is important so everybody can have an understanding for everybody, whereas everybody is coming, so we can both get understanding to know what decisions we have to make and get the proper language that we need to use to make this better. I think there's a way where at some point could probably meet somewhere in the middle, even if it's not perfect. I think having some progress is worth looking into. So having the experts come in and educate us and working together, we can move forward.
One of the things too along these, I know it's a complicated issue. I did hear what you shared when you talked about the expungement process as a valid, this is how we can help to mitigate and so that everybody has a fair chance to be housed. But I also know as well, if you haven't had that expungement like you shared as well, and you haven't walked through that process and you need a place to live, and and you've been doing right and doing all the things right, but if you have that as a background, you know, doors do shut on you. And that's just the experience of, I believe, many people that are in that position. But I also understand the dynamic of wanting, as a landlord, wanting to make sure that you don't bring in people that are going to hurt or harm the property. It's a business as well as as a service. And so, so being able to discriminate in that regards, is this a safe person? Is this really healthy for this community if they're doing this or that? And there's a track record of continual. But at the same level, also, there's one last thing I'll say about it is too, there's the added complexity of the fact that even people that have had that as a background and haven't had the transformation process yet within their lives and are trying to get on their feet, having a stable home really helps. And I think that's the part where there's a lot of desire to see how do we advocate for the people that are trying to do right or have begun that process, and the way that things are just experientially for many in that is that they do get a lot of doors shut and they're not considered even if they qualify for the other things. And maybe there are these other entities that are out there to help in situations like that, so there isn't discrimination that could be advocated for. But I think a lot, again, they don't know, if you don't know what you don't know, and who's going to help you. And this is a place.
Saying about
Yeah.
trade-offs.
Yeah, and I think that's, and I guess I'll be quiet with this, with just on the trade-offs part. You're absolutely right. You know, sometimes by caring even for the minority, the majority can be affected by that choice if it's not balanced depending upon the type of ordinance or policies, because in real life, one size does not fit all. And every situation is so radically different and unique that often you have to have these opportunities to, even like we did today, make suspend the bylaws because just practically, you know, we have somebody that's more qualified in the sense of their availability, their time, their passion, and so it is complex there. And this is why I think that having the help of you and others and the team and making some progress in that, I think would be helpful. And so I know that you're dedicated to this, and I believe everybody here, and even those that are challenged by this ordinance or suggestion could agree that there are real challenges that we're trying to address that are fair for us to try to get, as Justin shared, progress.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. I really appreciate that sentiment. I know Vice Chair House had her hand up as well.
Yes, so I wanted to say, I almost forgot what I was saying. Let's see. I just had a brain.
You want me to move you to the list? I'll come back to you.
No. So what, I said previously in previous meetings, yes, we need to get those landlords. Remember I said that? We need to get those landlords to get their perspective on their decision making, because we not only don't want our community to be discriminated against, we don't want these landlords to feel like they're discriminated against because they won't bow down or choose to or take a chance at providing equal housing or housing to people that have some blemishes in their background, but may be doing the right and they don't know. They can't wage it. They can't take that chance. So yes, I think we need to involve those parties as well. So no one feels like it's discrimination in either area. Now, the thing about it is yeah, we have expungement, but those that's not pursuing that expungement or those that haven't got that expungement are at risk. And it's putting our community at risk. Like you said, we're not a wealthy city. We don't want to become any poorer, and we don't want to become a place where people are being housed on the street either. Because it can get that bad. It can get that bad where they're housed on the street. If you look at some of the cities that you go in and you see people, you see it now more. You see it more, people sleeping in abandoned buildings, in front of abandoned buildings, or people here, there, and yon. We don't want to become that and that bad. So I think we have to address it some kind of way because it's not getting better. It's not getting better out here because people are not able to make their way due to background or whatever. So I think we have to include all parties at the table to talk about this so we can get it before it gets to a status in which we can control it.
Thank you. Very good point.
The one thing I wanted to say, just as a point of order, is that they just said to send it back for additional review for the commission. So it doesn't actually have to go back to that August meeting.
Okay.
Yeah,
if
we
wanted to
aren't-
take time
We aren't
to
like
work
under a
on it
deadline
more.
or a time.
Okay.
They just didn't,
So if we wanted to work on it more, it wasn't gonna go immediately back on the August 27th.
right.
okay.
It's not just
That's good
going
to
back on a
know.
certain
We still
date.
have our August 15th meeting, but
And I think I do think that there's wisdom to like throwing the baby out with the bathwater in this case, like, and just starting fresh because
Mhm.
it did have so many, right? Like our charter is different than Ann Arbor's charter. And so, and that's part of the issue with the way the ordinance is. And so like, if we need to just do it differently and make sure that it's right the first time, just start and make sure it's right the first time.
Or the one,
I
the
think-
one that fit for us.
Yeah,
right.
I think having the experts here and like you said, having the community included in the landlords, that's what's gonna help us do it.
And just study it from the beginning rather than jump it.
So I know that studying it, there's already been so much conversation about the housing issues in our community and how hard it is for people to have housing and affordable housing, et cetera. So I think what sounds like a next step for us is having the Fair Housing Center present to our commission at the next meeting to discuss what exactly do we want them to discuss? The legalities of this, where it's wrong and where it could be better, how to make it more tailored to IPSI, those kinds of conversations.
I
Yes.
think the bottom line is that there are, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I thought.
Yeah, Brittany, you did have another thing. I was just on that subject, but please.
Mr. Bart, did you understand the rental application process before you gave your professional opinion to city council?
I understand the rental application process?
Yeah, for the for the Fair Housing Act that we are discussing.
Sorry.
That's what it's called, right? For the Fair Housing Act that we're discussing.
He didn't give an opinion on that one.
He
on-
said
in
to
the
keep
memo.
it nil. He said to keep it, he said to lay it to bed that we
Just
should
wondered,
get rid of
were
it.
you able to look at?
That's her
No, I
question.
wasn't given
Okay.
that or.
Because you've mentioned a couple times that there'd be no background checks, but that's not accurate. That's not.
There are
accurate.
background
There are
checks.
background checks. So I was just wondering if you were.
We're just
asking-
we're asking to change the order essentially. Is that giving someone the
Well,
opportunity? to
I'm
form a
asking if he
relationship?
knew that the process that you were giving a professional opinion on before you gave the opinion.
My opinion was.
'Cause it
based on
seems like-
discrimination. I think and I don't know, I guess I didn't consider whether there was a background check or not, but what I got from the ordinance, and it's difficult to find out exactly what it is, was that you couldn't discriminate against someone that had a criminal record.
Okay.
That was the gist of the ordinance. And
But
just-
here on the third step is where they would do the background check and there's
Is
additional
this part of
assessments.
The ordinance that you're talking? about?
Correct, it
I
is.
haven't seen any.
Yeah.
It's listed under exceptions, item 1, starting with A, it says, review an applicant's criminal history until the housing provider first does all of the following. You do all of those following, and then you review their background.
It's
And if
just
you-
a step a little later on,
This is
but
where-
asking,
Yeah.
it's like misinformation was spread and
Want to send that to me? I can take another look.
Thank you, because I think that's going to be the biggest thing for the clarity of people that heard that and are have a misunderstanding to understand that's an important step that is included.
Right.
So,
Well, I know you mentioned that you didn't understand it when you first read it because the form was different, but that is already in the ordinance. That is already outlined in the ordinance. It already says you do a criminal history background until after these things. And should you find something in the background that whatever it says right here, then you have to write a letter saying to that person your reasons for denying them the housing. And what this ordinance is we're asking for the process to be flipped a little bit. So meaningful relationships are formed and understood before you go and you see a person's conviction and immediately make a judgment. Because as you know, as an attorney, a lot of times people take pleas, a lot of times people are convicted higher things, but that's actually not what they did, or there's context to the situation that we're missing, that maybe there's a story to be told behind that situation. And that is an opportunity for that landlord to be able to hear that from that individual before they say, no, I'm not comfortable with this.
I'd be happy to take a look at this additional.
this is
You
all
gotta look
part
at
of
right
it.
now, do
Yeah.
I can take this and take a look at it.
And maybe if
Thank
we
you.
can get
The
something.
gravamen for the operative effect is not the process, but the final thing is whether or not you can refuse to rent to someone based on a criminal record. And it's the same thing in our ordinance where we're talking about, depending on whether or not it has a reasonable relationship to the job or the opportunity or something.
Right.
I'll be happy to take a look at this.
And part of the things that we need to discuss too and flesh out more is that after you do these steps, before you do their background, one of the things is saying, if you do deny them, it has to be because of these state and federal regulations, but those were not defined. As Councilmember McLean said, what about people with arson? What about people with on the sex offender registry? Those are things that are classified under different federal state guidelines, and that's what needs to be fleshed out more, but there is a background check.
Where I said that there's trade-offs. Who's going to pay for all those things you just mentioned?
Which things? I'm sorry, pay for what things?
Going through all of these different steps. Who's gonna pay for the time and the effort and the whatever to do those things? What you're doing is you're putting a burden on one person.
But we're having a burden on the city by having unhoused people plaguing our community and getting trespassed at tent encampments and having nowhere to go because there's nothing for them to do.
So
Go ahead, sorry.
I think again, just kind of going back and reiterating, these are the type of conversations that we're going to have with
Privately, or not privately, but
with
yeah,
a whole and group.
Whole group.
because, yeah, it's again both sides, so we got
Sure.
to figure out where to meet in the middle.
What I'm understanding is that the process, and I think, and having read through some of it, but not having memorized all of it and coming onto the board or the commission just recently, the idea of just having the process shift so that you can build relationship. I think, smaller landlords will do this, but some of the bigger companies, the moment they see that you have a negative, a history, there's no conversation, there's no relationship. And for some people, not for everybody, but and I think this is the place where, how do you bring accountability to that or help that? And just the shift of not getting to know them a little bit first, checking out these things. That's what I hear you sharing. That's what I see in the Fair House. And so if we can clarify that, because it seems like even from the community that information wasn't out and there was misinformation about this and and I think what you're doing, Commissioner, is very hopeful in us processing this out so we can get this out.
thank you. I feel like we all want the same thing. We just have a different way of approaching it. And that's what, like you said, Commissioner Harper, is like how we get to that is by conversation and being able to come to a collective understanding, which means that we need to first understand how we're defining these things because we're operating from different definitions. How you define discrimination may be different how I define discrimination and so on and so forth. So we definitely need to get to a place where we can understand where we're coming from to be able to really take into consideration the genuine concerns, because I don't want people feeling like their rights are being infringed on them by allowing access to opportunity and equity to other people, because that's not what equity is. Equity doesn't mean taking away from someone by giving something to someone else. It just means providing an opportunity, and how we do that means something. And so I'm hoping we can have a great presentation at the 15th in August to be able to kind of understand like where this could be better and more robust and less confusing. Do we want to move on?
No, I think that's good. I'm good.
I know we're at the end of oh, sorry.
No, we have to keep going.
Okay, we're at the end, towards the end of our meeting. It's like 8:11. So, I know the last thing on this one was the resolution number 2024-150, regarding the lowest law enforcement. I personally would like to not discuss this right now, because what we heard from City Manager Halinga is that it would be more of an efficient process for someone to put together a draft for then us to review together collectively and provide feedback. I'm happy to take that on if that would be something that would be helpful to the commission, so we can save time and just not discuss this right now. Item number E.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that's
So
fine.
you're saying we'll pick it up later?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Yes, please, start.
Mr. Barr, thank you
Thank you, Mr. Barr.
very much.
to make a motion.
Okay, will someone make a motion to move that to the next, August 15th meeting?
I make a motion to move the resolution number 2024-150 to August 15th.
Okay, thank you so much. Do I have a second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, no opposed. So we will move that resolution.
Thank you again, Mr. Barr.
Yes,
Yes,
thank you,
thank you
Mr.
so
Barr. Very helpful.
Who
Appreciate
seconded
it.
that motion?
Daniel did, Commissioner Jackson. Okay, moving on swiftly, city council liaison updates.
Swiftly. Okay, so first I would just like to say, Commissioner House did bring up another thing for the fair chance housing. That was an issue at council, and that was including the landlords. Some of the council members did speak with the landlords, and at our city council meeting, we had a few landlords come and express their feelings towards the ordinance. So I guess I'm just trying to say, next steps, including hearing the presentation, is really we should be thinking about what's next after that. Do we meet with Attorney Barr? Do we meet with the landlords and just come into that conclusion so we're not spending, too many meetings on the same thing so we can enact it?
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to share is while the process will change, I was wrong on a couple of things at the joint meeting. So I'm gonna walk these around to you guys really quickly.
Thank you.
Can I
We can share.
reiterate? Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Again, I do like the idea of the fact or the Mythbusters. So the things that weren't clear for that meeting, I think we need to get some clarity for that as soon
Yeah.
as possible.
I agree. Like I,
So, okay,
yes,
go
please.
ahead. if
No, you
wanna
continue.
respond.
I already got it.
Okay, and I just wanted to share that. I shared at the joint meeting that we only had $2,000 available. It's really 7,500.
Oh, okay.
They did not approve the 1,200, but they did approve 400.
Okay.
Because what they did was say, okay, we're gonna have 3 community forums. They split it up because they were not comfortable with saying yes to 1,200. And we didn't have an itemized list of what we were gonna spend the
Exactly.
money on.
Mm-hmm.
So what I passed out to you guys is the process currently. At the next council meeting, we are looking to change the process. But for right now, I just wanted you all to see what the current process is, and that is it.
So this budget allocation request policy, this is current but subject to change August 27th.
Correct.
Okay.
That's 400 for all of those sessions. I wasn't at that session, so.
Yeah, so
Oh,
at the last joint meeting, they proposed $1,200.
Mhm,
Just to give a number so we can move the meeting along.
mhm.
And so again, the city council just divided that by 3, and that's how they came up with the 400 amount.
so it is 400 for all 3.
I'm not saying that, I'm saying
Oh.
at this time, they were comfortable approving $400.
In general, period. Okay.
Yes.
And it sounds like how we do this first one and the budget that we have after doing this first one, then we can make another proposal if need be, if we need more money for the next event.
Well, let me
Because
ask.
we are gonna outline a process for the commissions to ask for money. We don't want to give the money to just one or two commissions.
Right.
So we're gonna outline a process because what we did not do, we allocated money, but we did not update the process.
Okay.
And that's what we're gonna be doing.
So is there anyone, would it be helpful if we did have like a line item kind of thing of how we would like a budget essentially? And if, is there anyone who has budgetary experience that would like to like draft up a version of this?
For the event,
Yeah, for the first one,
I can put something together.
that would be great.
That is one thing the council really
Yeah.
interested in seeing.
Perfect. Commissioner Jackson, I really appreciate that. Well, something else that we thought about was like the compensation for facilitators. So it seems like our biggest expenses, we're gonna try to get location donated. We're gonna try to get food donated. So the biggest expense is going to be compensation for facilitators to make sure that we're paying them fairly because we really want to get an action plan from this. We really want them to put their full heart into this. So if you can keep that into consideration when you create this budget of like how much their salary should be or their hourly, I should say, that would be great. And I know that Commissioner Avery is going to look into banks, but because she hasn't been feeling well, she hasn't had an opportunity to meet in person, and they haven't responded virtually yet or email. So we also have that as an opportunity if you want to connect with Commissioner Avery about where she's at with that and how it relates to your budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last thing I want to say is not HRC related, but I would like to say on August the 10th, I am going to be throwing a block party on Middle Drive. All is welcome from 12 to 3.
Thank you.
We will
Thank
be
you.
there.
August 10th, we should have had that first meeting there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would have knocked it down, you know what I mean? And killed two birds with one stone. You gonna have people, yeah,
Middle
that,
Street Block Party, mental health combo.
yeah, I mean.
Yeah. We can still do that. We can tell people about our event coming up too.
Do you have a flyer for your event? Oh,
Yeah.
perfect.
Gonna pass them out.
Thank you.
Public
Okay,
for
I'll
everybody.
put it in my
to
phone.
can just- all right.
They want to, I don't know, I wasn't at the meeting, so what did y'all come up with real quick?
For the
Mental
Joint
health.
meeting.
mental health. So what we initially decided is that we have 3 days already established. I don't have them memorized at the top of my head, but they're in the notes on the minutes online. But we're approaching it as mental health is for sure the first forum. And then based on the conversations that community has, the second one being housing may change pending if the community has concerns that they feel are more prioritized than housing, and then we will shift. And also same thing for public safety, but we have the dates and the times secured.
When is the
Oh.
dates?
Those are on the minutes. I don't have it
Okay, the
memorized.
thing
This
too is mental health what?
and community wellness, yeah.
We was going back and forth.
Yes, community, mental health, wellness. We were gonna ask the facilitator to put together like what that could look like, and we just needed a budget. Commissioner,
It's totally random. I see that has emergency sign. Is there a restroom, another restroom I can use?
right around the corner.
This is what I could have to walk around because I want the
Go through
alarm to
that.
go off.
You can go through there.
Okay.
It looks like the first
In the
day
meeting
is
a long time, huh?
August what?
Thank
August
you.
21st at 6 p.m.
Thank you.
We should have just had it with her block party, right? I mean,
We didn't know about it, but yeah, that's a good idea.
you can't, I mean, if you got a venue right there to captivate people, why not take advantage of it?
Well, we would have to ask her.
Would have cut down on the cost that you're trying to spend.
Party crashing.
It's partnering. That's what it's called. Partnering is
Well,
what it's called.
we would love to
because
partner when we know about them in
We
the future,
used,
so thank
because
you.
once this isn't happening, this is hard when you have event here, event there. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
People don't hop around. And August 27th, ain't they going back to school?
That's city council meeting.
21st?
So
When does school start? Did y'all take in that consideration?
September after.
No, it doesn't. School
after
start
Labor
in
Day.
August.
I don't know the date. I have heard that schools are starting before.
School
Labor
starts
Day.
in
Oh, they are
August.
to this.
But
time.
I don't.
Yeah, they've been starting earlier, I think.
Oh,
year.
I haven't worked in
Like
education.
the
I've
19th or
Time would
something.
still work even if it was during school.
I have the dates for you if you want to write them down. We have the first one for mental health, we have August 21st at 6 o'clock.
Where?
We're still figuring that out. Right now, we just have dates and times.
Okay, gotcha.
Everything else is up to the budget, which Commissioner Jackson's working on. And Commissioner Herman is looking for places that are willing to donate it. So the second one, housing, is September 21st at 1 p.m. And then the third one, public safety, is on October 28th at 6 p.m.
And another option would be the Freight House because we.
Thank you, yes.
That
That's what I
space.
did.
Thank you.
Let me just-
Yes, please write that down. Good, thank you.
I'll put that in the flyer that I sent you as well.
Give me that last date again. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
October.
October 28th at 6.
Okay.
So August 21st, September 21st, October 28th. Okay. All right. Was that it, Councilmember King?
That's all.
All right, moving on. City staff liaison report. Anything from Katie?
Just that it's been a pleasure. I'm being moved from the commission, so this is my last meeting. And so it has been a pleasure and I will be around not far. So if you guys need anything, feel free to still email me. I'm obviously still working hard behind the scenes. Let me know if you need anything.
We'll miss you.
Yes.
Who am I gonna text and call now?
Feel free to keep doing it, Justin.
He said, who will I? text
I'll
and
feel
call?"
lonely if you don't.
I only emailed. I need to get on the call
Thank
privileges.
you for your service.
Yes, thank you for your help.
Yes, for your service.
Other ladies coming in?
Who is this?
Who we getting?
Oh,
I believe
Lori.
It's gonna be Lori or Tracy.
Yeah, I think he said Lori, because Lori has attorney experience, or she's a lawyer, excuse me. Okay, well, thank you for your help,
Yes.
and what you've done with us, and we hope to hear how the office that you're working for in department goes. So keep us posted, because it's very relatable. It's the equity department, so. All right, next is commissioner report and proposed business. So if you don't have anything you want to add, just say no. Commissioner Avery's not here. Commissioner Doulos, do you have anything?
Nothing right now.
All right, Commissioner Harper,
Nothing.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yes, I'll be meeting with Adrian Wells tomorrow. She was one of the proposed facilitators.
Perfect.
So we'll be able to discuss at least something and get some stuff going as well. I know we're gonna still go with your pick if she's available.
Yeah, we're still waiting. There's some conversations happening, so,
Conversation.
yeah.
Yep,
Exactly.
Yeah, once we
Yeah.
get the budget, we'll be able to know
Yeah.
what we can offer people.
That's my only update. And also I did get the flyer, a mock of the flyer. So if you want to take a look at it, I sent it to, I'll make sure you all get it.
Would you like me to forward it to people,
Yes,
or?
Sure.
Okay, I'm happy to do
Um,
that.
That's all of my reports.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair House.
Nothing right now.
Okay, and I have nothing as well, surprisingly. Just joking. It's good to make fun of yourself sometimes. And now we're on to second public comment, where you are given 3 minutes to speak again, addressing the commission, and thank you. Hello.
Hello, Alexander Monroe again. I guess I'm the only person in the public today.
Yes.
First, on the matter of just conducting meetings in general order, I want to echo Councilwoman Simmons that if you guys aren't taking turns, it's not productive. I just listened to Commissioner Layton and I believe Commissioner Avery interrupting, talking over, and getting argumentative with the city attorney, who's a professional here as your advisor. If you don't want to listen to your advisors on their world of expertise, then we really don't deserve them. We don't deserve advisors, and they shouldn't put up with that. The other thing I wanted to echo was City Attorney Barr saying that this ordinance needs to be put to bed. That's exactly my opinion. And while I'm here, I wanted to read, if I may, Chapter 58 of the City Charter, Section 58. of the city charter code of ordinances, which I can see on Municode here, Human Relations Commission. It starts with a heading. It says findings. The city council finds that prejudice and the practice of discrimination because of race, color, religion, national origin, immigration status, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, age, marital status, disability status, familial status, educational association, source of income, height or weight, felony or misdemeanor conviction, open parentheses, unless there is a direct relationship between the conviction, offense, and the housing, the job, the opportunity, or unless hiring or accepting the person would create an unreasonable safety risk to property or business. So in other words, the city attorney just said that this ordinance is illegal, but y'all are pressing onwards. The city charter, let me finish. The city charter here, in the preface of this very committee, it provides that exclusion, but yet you're pushing onwards with an ordinance that directly contradicts this. It goes well beyond that. So I just wanted to mention also, the city was recently sued for First Amendment violations for an ordinance that was created and it was thrown out by the courts. That cost the city money. During the last city council meeting, Attorney Barr mentioned that they're having trouble finding insurance for the city to defend against this litigation, the litigation that you're creating. The litigation that you persist on despite being advised against, So why shouldn't local landlords be upset about this? It's absolutely horrible. So this is something we need to follow. And if we can't follow order, we need to start filing complaints, because we need to take care of the city, not run it into the ground, not run it into receivership. If they lose their insurance and we're sued, we're going to be ran by a city manager an emergency manager out of Lansing. If that's what you want, then continue on in this path. Thank you.
You.
I,
Do we have really fast? We're still in public comment, so we can't address people in public comment right now, but is there anyone else on public comment that would like, I hope you listen, in the future. Anyone else on public comment that would like to make a public comment virtually? Great.
One thing I want to say for the record, that I am Councilmember King.
I was gonna say that for you, and you are not Commissioner Avery, you are Commissioner Doulos, but he got City Attorney Barr's name right, which is great. But yes, Commissioner or Councilmember King, I apologize for that. Commissioner Harper, would you like to say something while we're now at the end of public
I
comment?
just want to say that he didn't actually go against. He said he was going to go ahead and do some research after we gave him the information that he needs to make a fair judgment on what we presented to him after we had the conversation about also bringing in other expertise people to be able to go ahead and do this work so we can work it out so the language will be correct for what we need to do for the next steps. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you.
We're working for the best way that we can be equitable.
Compassionate Solutions. Commissioner Doulos?
Yes, and about his comment, I did speak out of turn and I did speak over Attorney Barr, but I felt that because he wasn't informed on the process that he was speaking of, that, I don't know, that
It was
needed to
important to nip it
interject.
as quickly as you could as a point of order to prevent false information from continuing to spread. I can
Right.
understand that.
And also with that being said, I think Mr. Barr is fair from what he's shown us. I think he's an expert. So I value his thought. So I think as long as we continue on this path, a lot of great things will get done.
I personally thought maybe I interpreted this whole thing a little bit differently than the person who made public comment did, because I felt like the conversation with City Attorney Barr was productive. I felt like we were leaving with some information that's actually concrete and direct, where we're not left to feel confused. He's going to be creating a tracking system. We're going to be able to look at that tracking system. And we're going to be able to have a Fair Housing Center, a presentation to see how this can be changed specifically for IPSI. And we want to include landlords in this conversation with a myth facts buster spreadsheet resource. So I thought this was productive, and that we're leaving with a little bit more information. Go ahead.
Hannah.
Yes.
I just want to recognize that Councilwoman King did address people talking over one another. So I don't know if he was here present for that.
I believe he was.
yes.
Or, okay, So he should have heard that because she made that specific. And it didn't happen after that. It didn't occur after that. And we may put it to bed. We don't know. We just have to do the research, talk with those, do the suggestions he gave us and talk with the professionals and we can move on.
I
It's also
yeah.
really useful. I mean, like what I've seen from this body and from this group, as you guys have, I mean, it's new, right? Like that's one of the things that we just talked about at the very beginning of the meeting was that like it's a brand new commission. Like it's brand new in the sense that it hasn't been meeting, right? Like didn't meet all of last year, and so because it sat dormant, right? Like it was supposed to be meeting and wasn't able to because of people not being present and that kind of thing. I think that like we're learning on our feet. We're learning as we're going. Like that was the same case with me as well. And so I think that like we learned a lot of really valuable lessons here tonight. And so I think that that's true for myself as a staff person, you guys as commissioners. I think that Councilmember King would say the same thing. Do you know what I mean? Like we're all learning as a body. And I think that like we're all coming to the table with that posture. And that's all we can commit to the community. And that's what we do commit to the community.
Yeah, and offering each other grace in that process is important. So thank you for saying that.
She said it and Councilwoman said it, King said it with a little better respect.
I would like to say, if you don't mind, I would like to also hold myself accountable. I also interjected because of that frustration I experienced of trying to clarify a couple of things and also ask questions. Because for me, when we're using emotional, fluffy language per he said about our writing, I want to know about the fluffy emotional language he uses, like saying that we're taking the wheel, that we're trying to create actions on behalf of the city, or that we're creating issues and we're missing the mark. I wanted to know more about why he was saying that. And those are the reasons why I was interjecting the way that I was before he continued. But I do hold myself accountable to that and will be more mindful of that, along with making sure I turn my head to the right with my bad neck. So thank you. Please.
Let's just keep on doing the good work, doing the best that we can, and we'll keep on growing and learning.
Too, I felt a little bit disappointed that Alex didn't choose to stay and have a conversation, because it's in these forums that we get a chance to hear people's difference of opinion and be able to respond in accordance to that. It didn't seem like he really wanted a conversation, and that's okay. And maybe that wasn't the point of all of this, but I think that he brought up some really valid concerns as well to think about and to consider. And I think that's where walking through the process of figuring out how do we make sure that people are cared for, and specifically people that have been discriminated against. And this is an issue and a topic that we need to talk about. And so I'm grateful to be part of the process with you and along with so many that are trying to figure out how do we do this well, because it is complicated. So.
Right. We don't want to create any adverse impacts of something that we're trying to cause good things to happen. We don't want to have anything negative come from it by not doing our due diligence. Sorry, Councilmember King.
I was just gonna say before we end real quick, I just wanted to say, and it can't be a conversation. I'm glad Chair Layden said we have to wait to all public comments before we have a response, and then it cannot be a conversation back and forth. We can respond, but we cannot have a conversation back and forth. Now, after the meeting, we can have that conversation. And I would just say, unfortunately,
That's Robert's rules for
That's
you.
helpful, counsel.
Just kidding. It is so. All right, Commissioner Dulis, do you have anything you want to say on this subject before we adjourn, or have a motion to adjourn?
Nope.
Okay, well, next meeting agenda items, I have the resolution, talking about a community benefits agreement. We'll have more about that next then, reviewing our bylaws and a presentation from the Fair Housing Center. If there are any other agenda items that you want to add, please just let me know and we will get those on the agenda. But now we can move to a motion for adjournment. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
A second.
All right, I have a motion from Commissioner Harper for adjournment at 8:35 p.m. and a second from Commissioner Dulos. All in favor?
Aye.
And all opposed. All right, meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Wait.